Hey there, it's Rafi at Zurb, and in this video we're going to take a dive into the float classes built into Foundation. So there's a lot of utility classes built into Foundation, a lot for typography. These ones are specifically for floating elements. So you got a couple options here, float left, float right, and there's also a clear fix class to help you get those elements aligned properly. So I'm going to show you some examples in actual code on how to use some of these classes. So what I have here is a callout with an image and a button and the paragraph tag. So what we want is the image on the left, and then we want the button and the text to go over to the right. So we'll go ahead and apply our classes. So we can make sure that the image stays on the left with the float left class. And then we're going to go ahead and float the button and the text over to the right. Now you can see right away what happens when we add the float left class to the image. Because floats are kind of a layout hack, you end up with something like this where the image is actually overflowing the container. So the container is the height of the other elements that are not floated. Floating an element kind of takes it out of the flow of the element. So we're going to go ahead and fix that by adding the float right class onto the other elements that we want to float. So we got the button floated over to the right, and then we're also going to float the text over to the right. Okay, so this is kind of the orientation that we want, but you can see that the container still doesn't know what height it's supposed to be. Now it has just the padding that it has inside of it. It doesn't know the height of the elements inside. So there is something called a clear fix hack that could fix that. We have a class for that in Foundation. So we'll add that to the parent element that is containing the floated items. And now you can see that it can register the floated element's height properly. So these are the basic ways to use the float classes in Foundation. So another thing that you could do is actually float an image to the center. So we're going to take this image and we're going to put it just underneath of that callout that we created. And it's off to the left as expected. So if we were going to change this class to float center on the image itself, you'll see that the image centers itself. Now, float center is not really a float. It's actually using margin 0 auto to get that element centered. So this works as well, and you can use this on certain elements that don't have a percentage width or width auto. So anything that has a fixed or actual width, then the float center class works on that as well. Another example is something like this where you have a menu. We can actually float one of the list items over to the left. We can float all the other list items over to the right with the float right class. And then again, we put clear fix on the parent. So these are all classes that you can use to float elements on your pages and get some of the results that you want. Now, you would use the float classes again if you were supporting maybe older browsers that didn't support Flexbox. Flexbox eliminates the need for a lot of these hacks. We have another video on Flexbox utility helpers, which I'll link right here, and you can check that out.